Coming to you live from deep within a. It's actually really sunny and springy, and there are daffodils here in Virginia. Um, so it's not a wasteland. It's actually like a really beautiful and very libertarian part of the United States. The few, the brave, the bitchy, wading through the monster closeted feminist hordes with Rantzerker number 238. Tomi Lahren knows what a real man is. And okay, so before we get started, this isn't just us picking on Tomi Lahren, but we're looking at this panel. I did a little bit of this video in a patron show I did earlier this week. This is from Piers Morgan, Uncensored. And you probably have opinions on Piers Morgan. But one of the things that I think is good about his channel is that he does bring on people with different perspectives and he lets them speak. It usually just ends up with people strawmanning and yelling at each other, and not a lot gets done. It's generally unproductive, but you do get an opportunity to get a glimpse into like what people are talking about and what people are thinking about and how they are looking at, certain events or the societal response to said events. And that's kind of like what my interest in this is. So I am here with Hannah. Hello, Hannah. How are you?
Hello. Sorry, I'm just making sure I have all the chats up on my screen so I can see.
Allison offered to potentially come on, but she's dealing with something, I guess. So it's just going to be me and Hannah today. Karen can't make it this week. Yeah, it's just going to be you and I, unless Allison changes her mind the last second, which is entirely plausible. But yeah. So and then maybe we'll have Karen next week.
This means you guys all have to listen to me be actually feminine and talk your ear off.
Yeah. All right. So this video we're going to be talking about is a panel discussion. It is about the Netflix series Adolescence, but I know that we've talked this to death, so it's not really about that. That's just sort of like the launching pad for the conversation, and the conversation is really a debate about toxic masculinity. And before, at the outset, let me just put my bias out there. There's no such thing as toxic masculinity, in my opinion. There is just bad behavior, and anybody is capable of that. We are all fallen creatures. We are all flawed and can do these things. And I think the toxic masculinity as a term is just a buzzword used to control men's behavior by leveraging women's victimhood against it, because toxic masculinity is only masculinity that annoys, I don't know, like power hungry women and weak men. That's basically what it is. Okay.
And you have to understand something about the history of the term toxic masculinity. All right. Mm-hmm. So there were two groups of people that this term came from. The mythopoetic men's movement looked at aspects of immaturity that you see manifesting more in society, thinking this is what makes a real man, toward boys, versus, there are different aspects of human immaturity that girls will hold on to growing into womanhood, and that society normalizes in behavior of women. Like pretty much social aggression, whereas with men, a lot of times it's more physical aggression. And how you handle your aggression is a lot of the basis for the idea of that toxicity. And so they were exploring, how can grown men who have matured and who are successful and have good, happy lives, how can we mentor boys in developing more mature responses to social pressures, to their internal pressures, to any impulses of anger and aggression and things like that. And that was a good thing. But they still looked to the feminine nature as a solution to that, which is not a good thing, because just because girls are more cowardly when it comes to overt confrontation and overt violence, where they might be at risk for physical damage, doesn't mean girls aren't aggressive, right? They're still just as capable as destroying another person as guys are. The difference is where a guy might do it with his fists, a girl will do it with the rumor mill, or she'll do it with organized social exclusion. Nobody's going to sit with Karen today because we're mad at Karen. The "you can't sit with us" meme from Mean Girls is actually pretty accurate. And it's all about social control, and it's all about immature means of handling, your internal conflicts and your external conflicts. Well, then you have the other end of it. There's a prominent feminist in Australia, goes by the name of Rayon Connell. Rayon Connell was Robert Connell first. And that this is, I know there's going to be people mad at me for dead naming a trans woman, but this is important to the development of the feminist end of the term toxic masculinity. Because for Robert Connell, masculinity would have been a prison, right? Going through dysphoria is not the normal experience of masculinity. It doesn't come standard with the masculinity package. Most guys don't experience it. Most guys don't have to deal with, gosh, maybe I'm a woman. All of this is wrong for me, every last little bit of it. Maybe I need to completely change everything about myself in order to be comfortable with myself. Most guys don't go through quite that level of change when they're developing their personality and their character growing up. Connell did. And during that time, Connell created the feminist term toxic masculinity and described the characteristics that Connell felt were toxic and were characteristic of masculinity. And quite a bit of that is treating things that have a healthy end and a toxic end as just always toxic and always bad, and treating things that are masculine and feminine characteristics as always masculine and bad because they're masculine, or masculine because they're bad. So the term really, no matter what the mythopoetic men's movement intended when they were coming up with it, it doesn't matter today. Their intentions were noble, but today the term has nothing noble about it and should never be used by anyone to describe anything about masculinity.
Yep. So yeah, it's a buzzword used to control. So now they're going to talk about it. And I think that there are some really useful takeaways from this. So I think he's going to introduce the panel. So let me just go back to about here where he does that, I think. And so let's play.
Drama that references popular culture, as so many do. Critics of the show say it's another version of the same man-bashing narrative that gave rise to the so-called manosphere in the first place. Well, here to debate all this is the host of The Crucible, Andrew Wilson, the radio host, James Barr, the host of Tomi Lahren is Fearless on Outkick, Tomi Lahren, and the host of The Determined Society, Sean Fraser. Welcome to all of you.
All right, so so you got Piers Morgan's the host, supposedly neutral. But the truth is that everybody on this panel, except for Andrew Wilson, is feminist. I'm just saying it in the outset. And this is the thing when people when they sort of what they don't, so a lot of people don't realize is that the default setting for the world is a feminist setting right now. Like everything is feminist. And so someone who's actually not a feminist is extremely rare, even if they claim to be right-wing or conservative. If they're still feminist, then they're just not those things. So it's actually a disservice to people to call them that. Okay. So I'll just run it down quickly. So Andrew Wilson is I don't know if you guys know this, but he's like a Christian debate me bro kind of guy. He's actually aware of men's issues. He appears on the Whatever podcast frequently. He's also sat down and talked with Paul Elam on a stream. and he runs this thing called the Crucible. And he is kind of like, you could say a paleocon, like an extreme traditionalist. Okay, I don't think that's bad per se, but I do think that it is something that I'm aware of that I don't think is healthy in the long run, because it's a bit extreme. But the problem is that our default feminist culture has created the need for this as a response, right?
Yeah,
So anyway, that's Andrew Wilson. What
I
were you gonna say?
ran into one of Andrew Wilson's followers in a Twitter thread recently, and that's how I found out who Wilson was. And I will just say that either this guy was a terrible representation of the outcome of Wilson's advocacy, or Wilson is an idiot. And I guess I'll find out watching
Yeah,
this.
so
But I ended up
he's
going looking for him, and I wasn't impressed with the first thing I found, which was an expose on, I guess, his
oh,
wife
I
is
I
a
saw the
tradbot.
links. Yeah,
Yeah,
like his wife has kids from a previous marriage, Rachel Wilson. But
and they
I don't.
haven't been honest about the situation. Like, there were receipts shown and everything. I don't necessarily subscribe to everything that Treehouse says either, but although she's pretty good with some stuff. But that showing the evidence was what really convinced me. Like, this guy may have some good things to say, and he may have some bad things to say, but he's not somebody that I'd be like, man, I really trust everything this guy says. I'm gonna
Right.
listen
No, for
without,
sure, for sure,
like, that's
for sure.
where I would say that about Paul Elam. I really trust everything Paul Elam says, because I've had a lot of experience listening to him, and he's got a lot of wisdom. And it sounded from the conversation I had in that thread with other people, other people had familiarity with his discussion with Paul Elam. It doesn't sound like Paul Elam was intensely impressed by this guy either. So they've got 4 feminists and non-feminist light. So no really, truly, like, he's still
Right.
gynocentric.
Yeah, perhaps. I mean, I'm not gonna make any claims one way or the other. I'm just saying he's the only one on there I would say is not
Yeah,
a
he's the
feminist.
closest you get
But
to being part
yeah,
of the really wide awake manosphere
and
that
and I,
understands what's going on.
yeah, and I think that this gives you a look at where the Overton window is. Like, it's obviously moving. So like somebody like this wouldn't be given the time of day like when we started doing this stuff 10 years ago. So I think that like it shows you where the Overton window is, but also how far outside of it we still are. So anyway, so he introduced the topic. He's going to start talking about this toxic masculinity concept. So let's
Andrew Wilson, let me start with you, because look, I've got 3 sons, 31, 27, 24. I think I brought them up to respect women, to not behave in a misogynist way, and to behave in a pretty decent way generally. But I'm also aware that they've grown up in an era when the likes of Andrew Tate and others have become increasingly dominant in the way that a lot of impressionable young men start to think and view women. And for all that Andrew Tate can say that is positive about getting fit and being successful and confident and so on, there's indisputably a hardcore streak of misogyny that runs through his veins, which I think has been quite damaging to.
All right, let's pause it there. Okay, so there's
This
a
is one of the
lot. Yeah, go ahead, Hannah. Go
This is
ahead.
one of the things that drives me nuts, right? Oh, I've raised my boys to respect women. What does that even mean? Because when we talk about men talk about respecting each other and talking about earning respect and living a life that's worthy of respect, showing respect for your elders, showing respect for authority, showing respect for experience and things like that. The word means an entirely different thing than what it means the minute we start applying it to women, femininity, your mother, your sister, the woman you're dating, and so on. And immediately the idea of misogyny getting brought up as well. Like, I wrote about this, gosh, it's been years ago now. An article called, I believe, Women Don't Understand Respect. And I'm gonna have to revise my statement. it's not just that women don't understand respect. It's that when women are the subject, most people stop understanding respect. Even if they understand it when they talk about it any other way, they stop as soon as there's a double X in the room. It's like it crosses out what respect actually means, and all of a sudden they're talking about veneration, they're talking about worship, they're talking about excuses, they're talking about being kowtowing, bowing down. Why is my computer going nuts?
Are you
Sorry.
okay? Oh no, say
Yeah, you can hear me still, right?
yeah.
Okay, that's all that matters. It's just trying to do things in the background that I didn't ask it to do. It's acting like a girl. But it bugs me, right? Like I'll take it back to a lot of times I take things back to this. I grew up in a neighborhood where we used to get into fist fights for fun growing up,
Mhm.
right? We used to one of our games that we used to play was there was a weeping willow tree in the neighborhood, and we would pull the long branches off of it that the leaves grow on after the leaves fell in the fall, and have whip fights. And we would also, playing the dozens, you throw insults at each other and stuff like that. And there's a means of respect, a style of respect, I guess, where you get your ass kicked and you might not like the other person, but you have to acknowledge, their capability, how well they did what they did. At the end of it, whoever's on the ground gets helped up. You're reaching out, shaking hands. You might even go play football together afterwards. You might, hang out and play video games together afterwards. With a piece of toilet paper rolled up and stuck in your nose, and this is a different idea of respect than what people think. And so when men bend over backwards to venerate women who have done nothing to earn it, they're not demonstrating some great level of character. They haven't demonstrated some great level of skill, knowledge, capability, wisdom, hardworkingness, and nothing that merits respect. No demonstration of respectability just because they're women. That's not respect. That's idol worship. And it's unfortunate that this concept that is idol worship has been accepted by not just feminists, not just overall gynocentrists in society, but even traditionalist people, even people who have this idea going back in time of this is the way families always were, and this is the way life has always been, and we should continue it because it's the most stable structure and so on. They have forgotten that 100 years ago, a woman who didn't have merit wasn't respected, right? So we've gone back into, not as in back in time, we've deteriorated. We've regressed, not regained. And it's what
Mhm.
he's doing there, the setting this up of, I raised my sons to respect women. He's setting up the idea that men can be flawed and men can be not respectable. But no matter what a woman does, you have to accept it and live with it, and treat her like she's still deserving of some degree of trust that she hasn't earned, and some degree of um, leeway in your life. Like you can relax certain boundaries because this is a respectable person. No, you can't. Not unless she's earned it. Not unless she carries herself and demonstrates herself to have that kind of character, to be a respectable person. And these guys are probably this isn't a good start for this at all. I'm not looking forward to hearing
No.
anything else
Well,
he
this
has
is
to
the
say.
Piers Morgan's like
Yeah.
This is the problem. Okay, we are the time we're living in now. The feminist narrative about men, about the nature of manhood, about the nature of masculinity itself, has been so pathologized that people feel the need to like get ahead of everything and say, look, I teach my boys to respect women. I make sure that they're not going to turn out like Andrew Tate. And this is the reason why, by the way, whenever people cry and whine about the supposed like bad parts of the manosphere, I tell them not to do it, because what they're doing is they're accepting a false premise. They're accepting a false premise about the manosphere and just men in general. And if you accept that, if you say, well, so and so is a real misogynist, it's only you're going to lose, because you have accepted their framework. You're now operating within their framework of there is like a hypothetical area where misogyny lives, and all men, any man at any point is in danger of moving into that hypothetical area, because you have accepted the terms, you have accepted the premise that exists. It's like saying, well, I don't know, I don't want to get into it, but when you do that, when you say, well, my people are not, like, if Andrew Tate died tomorrow and just like if he just spontaneously combusted like the drummer for Spinal Tap and was just gone, guess what? They would find somebody else and say that's the new line. I mean, what's the difference, according to feminists? What's the difference between Andrew Tate and Jordan Peterson, or Donald Trump, or J.D. Vance, or what's his name, Mike Pence? Like these people are not alike. They're not alike. I'm intentionally pointing out different people with different views that all could easily fall into that frame of, oh, well, this person here, like Harvey Weinstein, that's the misogynist. And it's like, but if you look at the court documents and if you follow the everything that's happened, he doesn't appear to be guilty of anything except sleeping with women who have elected to do so as a sexual favor so that it would be good for their career. So it's just like an incestual professional. No, it's misogyny. That's misogyny. What? This is why, like, I talked about the Harry Sisson thing, because I wanted people to see how easy it is for them to just move the goalposts and create a new, like, borderline boogeyman. Somebody's trying to call me. I can't talk. It's Lindsay right now. Hold on. Sorry, guys. I'm getting a call. Let me just tell her I'm doing a show. But
I'll jump in and point something out. All right. When you hear respect women, you'll understand it more accurately if you replace it in your head with overlook women's flaws, overlook the lack of accountability, overlook the selfishness, the solipsism, overlook the arrogance and snobbery that women have toward men. And then you'll understand what the individual is actually saying when they say respect women. Nobody says respect men, right? Nobody says,
No.
oh, you have to respect men. No, because we don't have to overlook those qualities, those bad characteristics when a man exhibits them. We condemn them when a man exhibits them, and we should when a woman does too. And the same thing is misogyny. Misogyny is any time a woman is mad at you.
Yeah.
Or any time a woman would
sure.
be mad at you, right?
Yeah.
That's misogyny. It doesn't mean that you actually hate women. It means that somebody thinks a woman would be offended or upset or wouldn't like the mirror that you're holding up.
Exactly. And so I say that, because what Piers Morgan is doing is exactly what is expected of him. He's being a good feminist, even if he says he doesn't agree with it, which he wouldn't say that. He would say something like, I'm sure you guys could guess, oh, well, I think women deserved rights back in, year 19XX. And I think that is, and I think that because if they didn't, because this is the thing, if you accept the premise that there is real misogyny and it's this person or this person, and it's always a man, and that there is real oppression of women, and it's like this point in history or this particular culture or this other country or this other government, that if you accept any of that shit, then you will never ever get out from underneath this narrative. You have to be able to say, actually, no, actually women in the Middle East, they want to live this way because their men protect them. And they actually think less of our women, and they actually project the same shit on the West. They say, look at how you, how little you protect your women. Look at how you treat your women by not protecting them. So, or if you go into history, it's like way less, simple, which is why, like, Hannah, you've done a series of videos on everything to do with the suffrage movement, because this is the lie that, well, not lie, but let's say the blind spot that people don't want to look at, and that lie by omission. And this is like, so again, Piers Morgan's opening statement lets us know, it sets the stage. It says, this is the framework we're operating within. This can't leave. That this is where the Overton window is at. And so let's see how Andrew responds.
Young men. So I'm not all in either way here, but I can certainly see the arguments. Where do you sit?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that so I watched the show, and it just goes through a typical feminine view, right? So all of these things are always through the prism of the feminine. So young boys, they don't do well in school. They don't do well in school because it's all programmed for the feminine. Stay still, fold your hands, right? Be quiet. Boys are rambunctious. They like to beat each other up. They like to be mischievous. They like to break things. They like to do that kind of stuff. There's no outlet for them to do that stuff. Their teachers are all women, right? There's basically all masculinity is now considered toxic. Basically all of it. The same women who are getting their double shot of espresso on the way over to the school they're about to teach at. They're 24 years old. Sometimes they're banging their own students, right? Hilariously enough. And then these people go out to Parliament.
This guy in the middle is shocked that he would even say that. But that
it's a fact, though.
Absolutely happens. Yes.
It's a fact. There's every so often, I'll get into an argument with feminists, and they'll be like, well, that's rare. And I will link them to a page that's been around for quite a long time that actually has a list of 500 female teachers that have molested their students. And, it's not only not rare, but it's not treated with the seriousness that it should be getting treated. So boys that experience this don't have the recourse that a girl would have if a male teacher did it to them, or even that a boy would have if a male teacher did it to him. When a female teacher does it, the level of accountability that's applied is extremely small in comparison. And it creates this situation where the boy is inundated afterward with messages that you should never inundate a victim of sexual violence with. The "you asked for it" method that feminists hate when they think women are getting it because, for instance, the police want their clothes so they can look for any hairs or other DNA evidence. And so they ask them, what were you wearing that night? Can we have it? And immediately feminists jump into, well, you're only saying that because you want to accuse her of asking for it because she was dressed badly. Or when any kind of safety advice is given to women to avoid the kinds of people who perpetrate violent crimes, because those are the types of people more likely to perpetrate sex crimes. That's not even you asked for it. That's just, you don't have to experience this. And here are ways to reduce your risk. The same way that you would say, here's how to eat and exercise to reduce your risk of a heart attack, right? But boys get told, oh, you must have liked it because she's pretty. Well, that doesn't necessarily mean anything, right? And their experience of being used and then dismissed, or thinking that they're in a relationship and then discovering that they're just a toy, like that's completely dismissed. The fact that they're not old enough to understand what's going on and be psychologically prepared for what she's doing to them, that's completely dismissed. The harm that's done to them is completely dismissed. And so when their support system, their family, any medical professionals that are providing care for them, when they're trying to help those boys recover from that, they're competing with things that would never be acceptable to do to a female victim. And And it does result in a higher level of things like they're up to 44 times more likely to have a substance abuse problem. They're up to 14 times more likely to commit suicide, right? So it's obviously done some damage. They're even more likely to question their sexuality, have difficulty deciding, what they want in a relationship and what kind of person they want to be with. They are more likely to uh, later on engage in violent crimes and become sexual perpetrators themselves. So it creates a level of dysfunction that can go in all kinds of different directions. And the
Yeah.
trajectory of that kid's life can be completely destroyed.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, I mean, like they want to, they want to talk about, I don't know, all the ways that men assault women and stuff. But if you look at the data, like the overwhelming majority, like almost 100% of men who engage in sexual misconduct or sexual assault have themselves been assaulted, and oftentimes by a woman in,
Mhm.
A position of power. So, like, I think I do have some critiques of Andrew Wilson's approach, because the problem is that I think that he's trying to sell himself as a brand, right? He's been going on every place where he can to sell himself as a brand, and part of what helps his brand is to be really hyperbolic, really aggressive, but not that he's not rational, but he's really hyperbolic, and he tries to trigger people. If he gets people triggered by saying something, over the top or whatever, something hyperbolic, then it probably gets him like a more, a better, like, more followers, because the people want to see him own people online. But the problem is that I think the quality of the arguments suffer a little bit. So when he says boys, they like to be rambunctious, they beat each other up, they like to break stuff, that sounds hyperbolic because it gets a reaction from like the security, like, focused
Mm.
feminine side of the discussion, which is basically everybody. They're all like, oh no, that we don't want to hurt women, because that immediately means hurting women. But what I think should be included in that is that boys and men, they are tactile, they work with their hands, they are creative, they are artistic, they are, they want to operate in the physical space. They're not necessarily interested in the emotional. They want to work cooperatively, they want to build together, they like teamwork. This is why they like sports. So these are things that, like, often get left out. Most of the time when people talk about masculinity, even the people who are trying to speak positively of it, they talk about the aggression, they talk about the strength and power, they talk about violence and why it's good, they talk about competitiveness, but they don't really talk about building and cooperation, which are also even more fundamental, I think, to masculinity, positive or negative. I don't even want to apply a sort of, qualifier or descriptor to it, just in general. So, Mike, I will say that that's a critique I have, but I get it because he's trying to build a brand. But
Yeah.
it's
Well, that expression, though, on the face of the guy in the middle, just it kind of says it all. It's kind of this, how dare you talk about this, right? And if the sexes were reversed, if the school system was male dominated, and you know, um, teachers were mostly men, and all of the administrators were mostly men, and the movers and shakers that make the curriculum and all that were all mostly men, and there was a pattern of sexual abuse of the female students, they would be talking about nothing else in this episode except that. And there would be so much outrage, and it wouldn't be wrong, like, if that was happening in that situation, which it didn't, even when the education system did have more men involved. There wasn't a pattern like that of sexual abuse, and there was sexual abuse that happened, but not any more than in the regular population.
yeah.
And we get told by feminists that it's much more rare outside of every situation where it's documented that sexual abuse is engaged in by women. So obviously there's a problem with teachers, right? That you can't have it both ways. They're not going to talk about it. They don't want to
No.
talk about it because it's women.
Yes, exactly. That's the thing. Well, it always ends up being the case that they leave women out of the discussion. But let's play some more.
the same women will go to parliament. They vote to send men off to war to stab each other in the face with bayonets. And you're concerned about toxic masculinity. It cracks me up. It's like the brutal savagery of men is a necessary precondition for society to exist. And we just kind of pretend like it's not. And this show should actually be an indictment on the feminine rather than the masculine, because
I'll play the rest of it.
basically masculinity is just punished everywhere all the time, nonstop. It's no wonder guys like Andrew Tate get so famous in these spaces.
He's,
I mean, what's the
he's parroting Allison.
alternative is everything must be feminine, tone policing, nonsense like this. It's ridiculous.
All right.
Everything he said, Allison said it first.
Well,
Everything
we know
he
that.
said there.
Yeah.
Well, except for the bayonet thing, that's a little bit. I don't think he realizes that war has changed in the last 100 years. It's not men stabbing each other in the face with bayonets anymore. It's men blowing each other up in the street with IEDs, and countries hitting men in other countries with drone attacks indiscriminately, often if it comes from the United States, and things like that. But yeah.
Well, I mean, like, I think,
you don't
I
even
think
get to see it coming. It doesn't have the same, I don't want to say honor and respect, but it is. I don't want to glorify war, but it is a change that has occurred where there did used to be some understanding of the other side, and some man-to-man. Like, if you go back and you read what was written by men who went to war in World War I and World War II, they had a respect for the humanity of the men on the other side. They could see them in front of their faces, and they could see that what they were doing involved killing a man or being killed. And today, you don't necessarily have that. You're on a computer sending a device to kill, or you're in a truck going down a road and you don't know if you're going to run over something that's going to blow the truck up. And it's not always man-to-man anymore. It's just terror.
Yeah,
so there was a huge difference. That's true,
but
something that
I
he
think
doesn't really touch on with that.
Yeah, but I think his point is that regardless of how it's done, it's men that have to do it. And women are the ones who vote for it. Exactly. So that's the real takeaway. I get what you're saying, but I think what he's saying is that it's hilarious, and I think it's true, that we're talking about toxic masculinity, the same group of people that will vote to send men to war. And we're ready to do that, by the way, right up until the election, because they wanted the right to kill their babies too. They were okay with us going to war with Russia, going to war with China or whatever, going to war with Palestine. They were okay with all of that as long as they were able to kill their babies. And it just so happened that men, who are the people who are going to have to suffer, came out and said, hell the fuck no, and finally spoke with their vote. So it is true that, like, it is ultimately because the living in the world is going to involve conflict. Unfortunately, it's just a reality living on Earth. And men are the ones that are expected to participate, and women are not. And yet women are the ones we listen to when it comes to, like, essentially deciding when a man is a man and when he is not. And so that's what the toxic masculinity is all about. So,
brief reminder, by the way, in the last few years, numbers at least, and I haven't looked back much farther than that, but I think it's been for a long time, actually. Because of the abortion system, women have made being aborted the leading cause of death in the world.
Yeah.
The world. I started out talking about this as being an American thing, but America has imported or exported abortion all over the world. And America has funded the export of abortion, not just through the USAID system, but also through several other systems. It's not just USAID funding. It's Department of Defense funding, Department of Health and Human Services funding, Department of Justice funding has gone into this. UN Women gets a lot of money for this from the United States, and then they distributed it all over the world. But yeah, women have made abortion the leading cause of human death in the world.
Yep.
Being aborted.
Okay. So let's play some more. Let's get the response from this.
James Barr, you were laughing, but I don't
just
think
that's
you had a
absolutely
joy what
crazy.
you're hearing.
No, I mean I don't think you've seen the show. Episode 2 is shot entirely in a school. I didn't see one of the female teachers drinking a double shot of espresso at all. None of the teachers were flirting with students. There were male teachers as well. I
It's
don't think you're
fiction. What the hell's wrong with this guy? Does he
Did
not
you-
understand
did
the
you-
difference
no,
between
no,
fiction and
did
real?
you-
Oh, I didn't see any of this stuff
Did
happening
you
in the
catch that?
show.
He completely changed. So Andrew Wilson was talking about the real world.
Yeah.
He said, this is what happens in reality. And this guy goes, that wasn't in the show. That I have a sound for that. I have a sound for that. Hold on a second.
Really?
Yeah, this is
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
Like, this man literally just said reality isn't real because the propaganda didn't show it.
Exactly. That's right. Exactly. He said the documentary that I saw on Netflix did not show this thing that you're claiming happened. So that means it doesn't happen.
Is he a millennial? He looks young.
Yeah, I think so. I don't know. I don't know who he is. His name is James Barr. I think he's like obviously a leftist talk show host or radio host or something.
Yeah.
But
you know what it makes me think of, right? There were a lot of parents that were really hyped up about, what are your kids watching on TV? What are your kids watching on TV? And my parents had an outlook on this, right? You can watch whatever you watch on TV, cartoons that show violence, cartoons that show magic, cartoons that show flying and all kinds of things that are not real, right? As long as the parents make sure the kids grow up having a solid understanding of the difference between fantasy or fiction and reality. His parents failed.
Yeah. Well, either that or again, he's just a guy with an agenda. His agenda is to say, look, don't believe your lying eyes and ears. Watch the show. The show tells the truth. So, okay, let's continue.
Describing the show here, I think you're describing your own insecurities or agenda.
Yeah, so this doesn't contend with the argument. Like, do you understand that I'm making an argument, an indictment of society itself based around my ideas that I'm seeing from this show? That's what I'm actually doing. So if you could contend with the fact that male savagery is necessary for the security of a nation and that women will indeed vote in the future in parliaments to send men off to war to stab each other in the face at 18 years old with bayonets, perhaps you can contend with that before we start, getting into, well, tone policing is actually good and toxic masculinity is actually bad. It's like, I think there needs to be a little bit more toxic masculinity, or what you consider to be toxic masculinity.
He doesn't even have anything. Let's see.
Well, great. Good for you.
Nothing.
I'm glad you think so.
Nothing.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't need to argue with that because
you just unlocked. You just unlocked. You got nothing.
You're making up.
You
an
do
agenda
seem
that
unusually
I've not said
muted by
any.
that.
I've not.
Now he's like, I didn't say that. No, you're just
He
like
didn't
you're.
say that.
I didn't
Oh my
say any of
God.
that. I know. Let's get to Tomi Lahren because this is where it gets juicy. I'm gonna jump ahead here.
All right, Piers. Well, I think, and I can't see you all, so forgive me if I'm incorrect here, but I think I'm the only female on this panel,
Correct.
so I'm really anxious to weigh in. Okay, so I think over the last probably 10 years, there has been what I call the pussification of men. It was everything should be about your emotions and your feelings, and men were emasculated, and this whole concept of toxic masculinity warped the minds of a lot of young men, and they felt masculine, they wanted to be masculine, but society was telling them they should be softer, that it was being toxically masculine if you wanted to play sports and chop wood and go to war. And so men were so emasculated and so beat down that then there was this revolution of what was actually toxic masculinity, the Tate brothers and others, which I feel as a female that doesn't represent true masculinity. That to me represents douchebaggery. And
Okay, I'm just pausing it there. So,
well, at least she didn't use the word real, or the phrase real men yet.
oh, she does use it. She does use it. Yes.
So I want to know what's going wrong with so many women in the world that they think that so many of the men around them are not real. Like,
What do you
are
mean?
they hallucinating? Because I see like 4 men on that panel, and they all seem dramatically different from each other. Every single one of them is real.
Yes.
But I'll bet she would call at least 3 of them not real men. And I would disagree. All of them are real men. Every single man in the world is a real man. All right. Some of them are less mature. Some of them are more mature. Some of them have ideas that are misguided. Some of them are liars. Some of them are assholes. But they're all real men.
Yep.
Right. Some of them are great. Some of them are strong. Some of them are wise. It doesn't make the ones that aren't great, strong, and wise not real men. It makes them normal human beings. Most people have something to learn. All of your life, you have something to learn. You have character development to continue. And we seem to treat men like if they don't pop out of adolescence at the age of 21 or 22 years old, perfectly formed and totally finished in their development, as good of a man as they'll be at 96, for instance, that they're not real men, which is bullshit. Because women don't have to grow up. And the little bit that women are expected to grow up doesn't have to happen until after you have your babies. And even then, it's a continuing process, and it's recognized as a continuing process. So he's supposed to be, 96 at 22, and she's allowed to be 12 at 42. There's a bit of an imbalance here. Do we start calling women not real women because they never grow up? Or do we acknowledge that character development is a process that continues throughout your entire life, and stop using the term real man and start looking at signs of strength and maturity and what's actually respectable in life, and encourage our boys to emulate those things? And like that goes right back to the mythopoetic men's movement. But if there's a way to do that without putting femininity and feminism at the pinnacle, it would be a heck of a lot better.
Yep. Okay, so so she's gonna get into so right now, okay, she says there's a pacification of men, but I think that there is like an important perspective she is bringing up, because it's essentially like for her, like for it doesn't live up to her expectations, right?
Yeah.
Her belief or her value system is what she's measuring. It's not that there is such a thing as a real man, like in general, which is like would qualify all of these men are real, even the gay man, but it's that it doesn't meet her qualifications, and that's why she doesn't like Andrew Tate or what she thinks Andrew Tate is, or anybody who ascribes to it. Again, if Andrew Tate spontaneously combusted today and he was no longer existed and he was like he was even erased from everyone's memory, they would just completely pivot to somebody else, because it's about maintaining the Overton window on what is acceptable for men to be. And this is the primary reason why so many young men are going to these guys out here, because they're rejecting that premise. They're saying, no, you don't get to say what kind of man I am. And these young men admire that, because saying no is the most masculine thing you can do. And so that's what they're doing. They're saying no because another guy stood up and said no. And now they're saying, oh no, he's not. He's a douchebag. He's not a real man. what's a real man? Somebody who says yes. Yeah, obviously. But let's listen more.
As a woman, I want a strong man who is a protector and a provider that will go to war if need be, that will protect me, protect my family, make money. I see that as being actually masculine. That's like the man that I grew up with, my dad. But what we're
I gotta give it to her. That this is just her saying, here's how hypergamous I am. Even though she's supposedly married and everything, she's just putting it out there. And I will give her credit for being honest. This is how hypergamous I am. Also, by the way, guys, I'm conservative. Bullshit. But anyway, all right, let's
Yeah, well, I'm gonna point something else out too, because she presented a false dichotomy there. Not just with that, but with her previous comment as well. She talks about the whole emotional thing that the left has sort of like, men have to be emotional, men have to be this, men have to cry, blah blah blah, right? It's not either or. Either men have to be hyper masculine and do all of only all of the things that people on the right are saying make up a man, or men have to become hyper feminine and do all of the things that people on the left are saying are needed. Society needs to start listening when men say, hey, this is bullshit and I'm getting angry about it. All right. The left doesn't like that emotion. When a man says, stop trying to take my kids away, they need me and I need them. That's the other half of it, right? Lots of people will gladly recognize, people on the right will gladly recognize the they need me part. But if a man talks about how much it hurts to not get to see his children because they've been kept from him by the courts, people start to back, well, you're not supposed to talk about that part, right? It hurts to know that your kids are not safe. It hurts to know that your kids don't know you. Someone you love with all of your heart, that's the most important people in your life, don't even know you because they haven't seen you in 5 years. That hurts. It's allowed to hurt. You're allowed to hurt because of that, and you're allowed to be upset about that. You're allowed to have that pain be acknowledged and have that pain mean something to the people around you, that this person has been wronged. This man has been wronged. He's been hurt by what the court did to him. It's not just wrong because it hurts the children. It's wrong because it hurts the father, right? And that's uncomfortable for people to discuss. The men are allowed to be sad. Men are allowed to be in pain. Men are allowed to get angry when they've been wronged. And them being sad or in pain or angry is not a reason for us to not listen to them. Right? So we have this backing away from, you have to cry so hard that you're allowed to cry can't be said. Right? We have this backing away from, you have to cry so hard that you're allowed to be angry can't be said. And a lot of men's issues don't get addressed by the right because they're too busy trying to push men's emotions down, instead of acknowledging that it's painful to be falsely accused. It's painful to be denied a relationship with your family. It's painful to be locked up when you don't deserve to be locked up, right? It's painful to be ripped off, and it's painful to be forced into a terrifying situation like getting drafted or thinking you might get drafted. Those things are, it's worth acknowledging, and it's right to acknowledge that. But it doesn't necessarily mean that we have to turn men into weepy girls. Right? There's a middle ground. There's a whole middle ground there where men should be allowed to step up and talk about, hey, this is a problem and the laws are biased and that's causing this problem. So why don't we address this? And yeah, it hurts when we are going through this. So we're being wronged. You're doing us damage. Let's fix this, without having the right treat it like, oh, look at those weepy guys. How dare they be sad about their experiences? And the left treat it like, you're too analytical about this. You should cry about it and move on and just leave the problem unsolved. You know, the middle ground is men, once they've acknowledged their knowledge or their emotions, they also figure out what the problem is and they start doing the legwork to fix it. That's where the truth of masculinity is. And nobody, left, right, or center, outside of the men's rights movement, seems to acknowledge that, much less stand on it, much less work with it. So I don't think I'm not, I don't like to hate on women who can acknowledge, that they have that hypergamy, or who can value masculinity, but I don't think that she's valuing it quite enough.
Oh no, obviously not. Okay.
She's just valuing the parts
Well,
that
it's
benefit
just like
her.
exactly. That's just what I was saying. If she was, for her and for many, it's just not even like a left right thing. It's just women. For most women, it just comes down to like, what do I get out of it? And I don't actually have to offer anything, and I will demonstrate that. So
is these young men who look at Andrew Tate and the Tate brothers and they see somebody who's just quite frankly a douchebag and disrespects women. And because they've been so emasculated, they're like, oh, great, that's a manly man. But that's not right either. So at some point, I think we'll go back to maybe meeting in the middle here. You can be a man who has feelings and emotions, but you can also go to war and protect and defend your family. I'm hoping we can get back there. But the two extremes right now, they're confusing men, and quite frankly, they're leaving women with few choices. And that's the real tragedy here.
You see,
the real tragedy is women being affected by it. That's the real tragedy.
The thing that she said about the Tate brothers, I got to point something else out too, right? So I'm not going to call what they do and say disrespect. I don't think that's an accurate description of the term, right? Disrespect, it seems to me to be when you treat somebody with less respect than they deserve. And I don't think the Tate brothers do that. And I have seen the things that they say and do that women like to deem misogynistic, right? So I'm not saying that with any ignorance. What have women done to show the Tate brothers that they're better than they're being described? What are women doing today to show that they deserve respect?
Oh, well, that's a good question. Oh yeah.
And
Let's go ahead.
given these guys are right, I will say they're pimps. All right, why would you expect a pimp to respect women when his main experience with women is that they are selling intimacy or the illusion of intimacy for money?
But
that's
the Tate
his
brothers,
main experience.
That's true, but the Tate brothers still, they measure their worth by their attractiveness towards women.
Right. They're still gynocentric.
So they're still gynocentric. So
right?
what is the criticism here? And the women who work for them or worked for them or whatever, like they were choosing that. It's like the Harvey Weinstein thing.
I'm not condemning them.
I know, but I'm just saying it is a completely like,
it's consensual. Everything
contractual, consensual contract. Yeah. And like, but you may not like it, but this is what women are drawn to if those are the guys that they're being successful with.
There's this illusion that the overwhelming majority of prostitution that happens is forced. It's false. Mm-hmm. All right. Women get into circumstances because they have made stupid choices, that they start using drugs. They run away from home when they're a teenager because they're mad that their dad told them they couldn't go out with that guy. Right. And then they start getting into drugs. They don't go home when they discover that living on the streets is harder than living at home was. And then they get in with a bad crowd and they don't decide that the people that they're hanging out with aren't healthy for them. Right? Even girls that you would think of as smart. All right. I hung out with criminals when I was a teenager until I got hurt. And then I wised up and was like, all right, that was stupid. I'm not going to do that anymore. And, eventually went to the police and ratted on a bunch of people who were doing some really stupid shit at the behest of adults. And got nowhere with it, moved on with my life, right? But a lot of gals, that's not what they do. A lot of gals, once they're in, and they just dig that hole deeper and deeper because they can't admit that was stupid. I made a boneheaded choice, really dumb. And the consequences are because I made a stupid choice. So I need to make smarter choices. Instead, they're a victim of everything that happens, right? Well, it's not my fault that this guy is terrible to me. Just because every opportunity that I've had to get away from him, I've gone back instead. Just because every time the cops have been called in, I've hidden the information from them and refused to testify against him and gone back to him as soon as I get out of jail and he gets out of jail and all that. No, you are stupid if you're doing that. All right? You are doing that to yourself. The minute that you accept I'm not going to get, the help that's available to me. I'm not going to reach out and take that. I'm going to hide and sneak around and continue to associate with this person that's hurting me. You are being stupid. It's not somebody else's fault, right? Even if the guy's behavior is his fault, your tolerance of it is your fault. And that's the secret that people don't understand about prostitution, about abusive relationships, about every circumstance where some chick being loyal to a guy that's cheated on her with every skirt that has walked past, right? Every single incident like that, every single time like that, when you have the opportunity to get away, get out, and stop, go to rehab, go to therapy, anything but going to jail again and again and again.
Yeah.
Until you end up dead, which does happen quite frequently with these women.
Mm-hmm. All right,
And
let's play.
I've got to point this out.
All right.
We treat, as a society, we treat the mini versions, the not famous versions, the regular, everyday, in your city versions of the Tate brothers like they are the bad guy from the Great Race. Like they are the dastardly dude from cartoons tying women to the railroad tracks. Like they went into neighborhoods where innocent girls that never had any exposure to any of this stuff at all are living and just grabbed them out of their houses and turned them into prostitutes. And they're horrible. And all of the men that are involved in as consumers in this industry know very well that these were just poor innocent little things that had been grabbed out of their poor innocent little homes and tied to the railroad tracks for their pleasure. We act like that's the situation and the women have no agency. And as long as that's going to continue, in circumstances where women have less agency, where they are kidnapped, where they are sold, where they are trafficked in foreign countries and things like that, we're not going to stop it because we're not going to be able to tell the difference, right? And we're not going to be able to hold women accountable for not taking help when they need it. And so they won't reach out. They won't go to rehab. They won't tell the police who's abusing them, and they won't put a stop to their circumstances. I don't expect anybody to like what I just said, but I do expect some people to think about it and consider. The next time you hear somebody talking about how the Tate brothers don't respect women, maybe it's because women have demonstrated to them over and over again that when they're not con artists, when women are not prostituting themselves to make money from dupes, that they themselves are dupes.
Mm-hmm.
Why would anybody respect that?
All right, let's play some more of the video. If you guys want to send us a super chow, go to feedthebadger.com/just the tip and put one through. I really appreciate it. I'll read it on the show. I did get one yesterday, or we did get one yesterday after the show was over. Laptop 215 gives us $5 and says, "Fun fact: feminism requires that you attribute malice to men as a group." Thank you. We knew that, yes, but thank you for the super cow laptop. All right, so let's listen to. I think Andrew's going to respond to Tomi Laren's comments here.
I completely agree with you, but Andrew, you were shaking your head quite vigorously. Why?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just more feminine or feminist nonsense ultimately. And the covert feminism in society is big, especially on the conservative side. So here's what happens, right? Women need to have feminine virtues for men to be pursuing masculine virtues, for you to say things like, well, men, what I want is for men to protect me and I want men to make money. Well, that's great. What that ends up doing is it gives you a set of privilege in society. What do men get?
Look at her face
What
fall.
do men get for doing that?
Yeah. Yeah. I know. And this is the thing that like this is really like the thing that's hitting the nail on the head. Well, it's the bit that makes people the most triggered. When you say, what are women's duties? What are women's virtues? What are women bringing to the table? However you want to frame it. Everyone gets so upset, no matter what, even the most reasonable people. They're just like, I can't believe that you're even proposing this. But the truth is, it's just a true thing. Like if you're gonna say, men, because look, I don't think women should be fighting in wars. I think women fighting in wars are going to get more men killed because they're just not that good at it. So if we already have that inequality that really can't be addressed with all the technology in the world, it doesn't matter. Men are better at video games than women. They'll be better at like piloting drones. They're just better at that stuff. And that means that they're going to be, if we want people to be effective, we're going to need the most effective people in those positions. And that's just going to be men. So what that means is that we have to ask, okay, ladies, what are you going to do? What is like, how are you earning your place here in our world? Right. And this is something that literally like Sargon got bent out of shape over. It's like, dude, but there is some, like, you have to accept that if women are literally saying here, I want this, and then somebody says, okay, so what are you going to give us? I don't have to give you shit. My presence. I am the table.
Yeah.
That can't be addressed. Like you can't address it.
It can't just be women have the babies and then men do everything else either.
Yeah. No, not
history,
saying that.
No. But tradcons are. Right?
Yeah, so some of them are. They think that's it. Motherhood is the most beautiful thing in the world. It's like, yeah, but that's just one thing.
Motherhood is incredibly messy. It's not. It's beautiful. I suppose in a subjective, I don't know, abstract sense. All right, but there's a lot of motherhood that is downright ugly, and there's nothing wrong with that. I guarantee nobody would have liked, the way that I looked when I was demonstrating to my son in the grocery store what he looked like having a temper tantrum so that he would realize how embarrassing it was and not do it again when he was 3 years old. Everybody in the grocery store looked entirely shocked. I still remember the faces, but it worked, right? And it was how I handled it. But in any case, we have a situation today wherein we've completely forgotten what a woman is. And it's not just, the biological, question between biological women and trans women. No, I am talking about what an adult female is versus a stupid little girl who does stupid little girl shit her entire life and expects to be taken seriously. And women used to be responsible for their families. They used to be as responsible for their families as men. Your job as a wife, your job as a mother was to have your husband's back. Your job was to make sure that when he came home to a safe haven where he could recover from the harshness of the world. Your job was to make sure that he knew he was loved and cared about, and that his children were going to be provided for and protected and nurtured and taught wise things and not stupid shit. And women aren't doing that anymore. Not even tradcon women. because tradcon women are teaching their sons to respect whores.
Respect.
Right?
Yeah.
Tradcon women are teaching their sons to overlook the worst character flaws they would never tolerate in a dude if the person that they're looking at is female. Right? That is the stupidest thing you can teach your boys. That is why our divorce rate is so high. Because boys are growing up and thinking that they can marry somebody who has never demonstrated an ounce of accountability in her whole life and trust her, and she's never going to betray him, and she's never going to do anything stupid. She's not going to bankrupt their family. She's not going to fail at raising their kids. She's not going to get pregnant when it's not helpful to their family, which you can control as a woman because you have a dozen types of birth control with like 40 subtypes that you can choose from. And you can also say, no, not this week. Right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we still call them women instead of, dumb little girls that have grown up physically but not mentally. And we still treat them like there's some degree of respect that they are automatically entitled to over and above respect for their humanity. And that's a big part of the reason why we have boys looking to examples of men who basically exploit other men for a living, as opposed to men who have accomplished great things in the world as their idol.
Mm-hmm.
There's also another fact here that they're probably not going to talk about. All right. The school system that's run by the women that are molesting their male students, that school system has eliminated from its curriculum any discussion of historical male greatness. Right? I grew up with guys who idolized Leonardo da Vinci because he had so many ideas and he wrote out so many great things, and so many of his ideas turned out to be workable. Not necessarily focusing on any personal life. Like, I have no idea of his personal life. I know all about the inventions because I grew up with guys that talked about that, and girls too. Right? I grew up with guys who idolized men who saved countries, who invented new ways of doing things in modern medicine, who invented new ways of processing food or farming, or protecting people from bad weather, or protecting people from other disasters. Right? Who invented ways of saving life and preserving life and improving life. And now boys don't learn about those guys. They don't learn about anybody throughout history that has done great things. And instead, they learn what terrible leaders their countries had throughout history, and what terrible things their countries have done throughout history, and how we owe other countries some sort of apology and allegiance for having been successful throughout history. And then they get told what terrible people they are for being boys. Well, it's no wonder they're looking around social media and finding the guy that is making the most money, or getting the most women, and say, well, I'm going to admire that guy. Who else are they going to look at? Who's being held up as somebody that they should look up to, somebody that they should admire, somebody they should emulate? Who is, say, Tomi Lahren operating or offering as an alternative? She hasn't named anybody. Who should you be like instead of Andrew Tate? She hasn't said anything.
Let's listen to more.
For you, what are we getting from women for doing that? Are we getting chaste virgins on our wedding night? No, we're not getting chaste virgins on our wedding night. Are we getting women of great virtue? No, we're not getting women of great virtue. The idea of courtly love is supposed to be done for women of great virtue. Where are they? Well, they're nowhere. And so in modernity, in society, when female conservative influencers say this, it's actually a form of covert feminism. They're saying, I want privilege in society, right? But what is it women are giving to men to get it? What are they giving them? Tell me.
Well,
Tommy,
they gave you the play.
All right, I'm pausing.
I love
here.
that.
So
They both
just
try to
want-
start talking at once.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know why the guy just tried to chime in, but let's listen to. So Tomi Lahren is like on a delay, so this is why there's a pause. But let's give it a listen.
Piers, can I please chime in here?
Yes, you can. And then James can, and I'll come to you, Sean.
No, I would love to. I love this whole thing of like, if you're a female conservative and you don't believe that men should be douchebags, that all of a sudden you're a covert feminist. Call me a feminist. I really don't give one crap one way or another. But I can tell you this, a lot of these men, these podcast hosts on the right that like to think of themselves as these big masculine men, and what am I getting out of it? I can tell you this.
There's that feminism.
All right, I believe
There's
I'm a
that
woman of
feminism
virtue,
coming
right?
out.
Yeah, there's the feminism. Oh, and then you're interrupting me too,
Didn't
which
take
is great. I
long,
let
did
you
it? Didn't
talk.
take
It's my
long,
turn.
did it?
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you want to speak
So,
over a man?
yeah, I don't
Are
care
you
if
a
you call me.
strong,
I don't
independent
really care
woman?
if you call me a
strong,
feminist.
independent woman.
Yeah. Yeah. You're actually interrupting me. I didn't interrupt you when you were spewing your bullshit. So now it's my turn. Okay.
You mean the truth?
Like I said before. So
What?
That was great.
Well, again, there's a delay, so like she thinks he's talking over her, but he's just speaking after her, and it's confusing.
I believe
Yeah.
there we go again. Piers, I'm a woman of virtue. I happen to be independently successful. I have a husband who's not only a former professional athlete, but is currently a professional baseball coach. So is he not a masculine man? I mean, I'm confused here. What's your concept
Don't you
of a
understand that
masculine man?
misses the
Mine is a
point,
man who
that
respects
misses-
me.
Yeah, that
Like,
misses
she-
the point,
I-
though.
she
Like,
didn't
you're still
miss-
not contending with the
What's the-
argument
what's
that
your-
I'm
what's your
making. You're
point?
saying,
So she says, "I'm a
says,
woman of
woman of
virtue because
virtue 'cause I earn money."
Because I'm a successful businesswoman and I'm married to a high value man. None of
Yeah,
those things
so
are
she's
virtues.
like,
Those
yeah.
are not virtues. So she doesn't understand what that is because she still exists in a materialist, like feminist framework, which he's completely correct about. Like
She didn't say a single thing that she does for her husband.
no, she doesn't. And that they're gonna keep hashing at this, and you're gonna see that she never really does understand like what it is she brings to the table other than her presence.
And I'm going to
inside
be
of
blunt about
society,
this.
right? This
She also didn't say anything about loyalty. All right.
No.
And I will say I've ragged on the idea of thoughts becoming virginal because now they're trad thoughts and everything. I'm
Yeah.
not saying that women are never redeemable, that they can't learn to be better than they were when they were younger, when they made a bunch of mistakes, because obviously that's not true. I don't trust that most women do that because they don't have the level of societal accountability that men do. So a woman who was going to reform, a woman who's going to demonstrate that accountability, that has to come from within, because it's not going to come from outside, where men get it from within and outside. So in that way, men are kind of lucky to be kicked around by society, because at least in the process of getting kicked around by society, you learn to make better choices. Whereas women have to figure that out for themselves, which is really a rotten thing to do to women. But it means that when a woman does do that, you can at least, she's solid, right? You can at least trust that she's solid. But this woman didn't say anything about that. All she said was how great her financially she was, and how manly her husband was in her eyes.
Well,
And it's great that she thinks of him that way, but but she didn't really give any characteristics that make him manly specifically.
It's mostly
Coaching
because she
and-
chose him.
Well,
Therefore, like his value is
like-
ascribed by her.
and
right,
coaching
when
can
she chose
be an outcropping of manliness.
Well, he used to be an
the
athlete. He's
desire to mentor boys and everything, but you don't know just because somebody is a coach that that's why they're doing that. She's at the shallow end of the pool when she talks about this stuff. She's not talking about the virtues of her husband, that he's a strong, nurturing husband and father. She's talking about this is what he looks like as a person, right?
Yeah, no,
And
I
she's
get it.
not talking
Superficial.
about herself as a supportive, nurturing wife.
Yes.
She's talking about, this is what I look like. This is my public
Yeah.
image.
Here's what I have. Here's my clout.
Right.
I'm putting my clout on the table. And that's right. She doesn't understand virtue. That's why she's confused. She's like, I said all the right things. I have a good life and I'm high status and I'm rich and I'm famous. What's the problem? And Andrew's like, you haven't answered the question. So let's listen to more.
Well,
Just
and
second,
like
right?
a good example, if somebody accused her husband of cheating on her, like let's say her friend comes to her and says, I saw your husband in this situation and it looked pretty hinky and I think that he's seeing this woman. Is she going to get mad at him and start demanding explanations, or is she going to defend him to that woman first and then investigate if she's not sure, right? Is she going to, does she already know him well enough to know that she can trust that that woman is making a mistake? Or is she at the shallow end in the relationship where, again, she's not sure? Because if someone came to me and said that to me about my husband, I would know already that it was bullshit. You know, just because you see somebody talking to somebody or he gives somebody a hug doesn't necessarily mean anything. I would know because I know my husband and I know what he would or would not do. And he would know because he knows me, because he knows what I would or would not do. This woman, I don't think that she has that situation because she would be talking about it in those terms.
Yeah.
Masculinity is not only punished, but also women on the right, covert feminists on the right, are constantly and consistently talking about how they need to have privilege in society. I want men. Their version of masculinity is men who take care of us, men who protect us, men who do all of this. Those are all duties that men have towards women. Great. What are the duties that women have towards men? What are the duties that women have towards anything? What do men get out of this arrangement? What are we getting out of this arrangement? Can you tell me?
I mean,
Well, I
as I
would
was going to
argue
answer,
that
Stuff I will say, point out again, Allison should be known for saying this because she said it for years before this guy showed up.
Well, Allison should probably go on TikTok and debate people or something. Like, I think that's how Andrew built his brand. He went into enemy territory and he debated people. So now he gets to go on Piers Morgan.
It's not that
That's what
easy.
it
I was
is.
on TikTok. I signed up for TikTok finally. I would say December, right around the time I made the video, the parody of My Sharona, the My Vagina video, about people wanting to vote for Kamala Harris because she was female. And I signed up, and then I went to log into the account, and it was already banned for several violations after just putting in my name.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, I'm not.
She
maybe
might
I got
be able to do it
too specific
anonymously
with TikTok, but like you just have to go and debate feminists online somewhere, and that's what Andrew does. And yeah, I agree. Allison would demolish people if she did it.
Oh, she would. Yeah,
let's continue.
Men innately
Well,
should be
I don't wanna
protectors and
interrupt you. Hang on one second. Let Tomi
Most men are
respond.
born that way.
Let Tomi respond to that, and then I'll come to you, Jez. And then Sean,
most
you've
men
been
are-
waiting patiently. So
Most men are born to be protectors and providers. I can't imagine my dad saying, you know what, to my mom, you know what, I'm not going to be a protector and a provider unless you do this. That's not how real men operate. Real men are protectors and providers, and they marry women who hopefully have some virtue, but also bring a lot to the table as well, that are great mothers, great wives, caretakers of the home. There's nothing wrong with being a traditional wife and mother. You're misunderstanding me if you think that I think that women should just be out doing whatever they want. I think that there are gender roles that should be respected. But I don't think a man needs to get something
I don't think the delay is
to be
causing
a
him to talk
manly
over
man, a
her.
protector, and a provider. If you think you need
No, I think he's choosing to talk over her, but she
Yeah,
won't hear
but
it until he won't hear
I
it on
don't
her
think-
end until a little bit
yeah.
later. Yeah.
I think she deserves it though, because what she did there was basically say that it's okay for women to exploit men as, because a protector and a provider isn't. If she hasn't done that herself, she wouldn't understand this, I suppose. It isn't just some easy, like, you get up and you go to work every day and you go home and it's done. It's every minute of every day the amount of stress, women don't understand the amount of stress that goes into being the head of household, being responsible for everything, being the person who doesn't get sleep at night if the bills are tight, being the person who doesn't get sleep at night if the neighborhood is not great and somebody might break into the house because somebody broke into the house down the street, right? Or your car got stolen twice in 4 months in the neighborhood where you live and you can't afford to move someplace else. And, these are things that, honestly, I didn't really understand when I was growing up, exactly how much sacrifice and stress and pain and suffering and anxiety and agony went into being the father in the household that I grew up in. What my dad gave up to be a man and not a little boy, right? And trapped in a man's body. And I didn't really understand growing up what my mom gave up to be an adult woman instead of a little girl either. But because I married a divorcee whose ex-wife wanted every stinking little penny she could get when we were going through our child rearing years, when we had our son at home. And so I was the sole breadwinner for our house for years because the government took every penny he made and gave it to her. Every penny they didn't keep for themselves, right? And they actually dipped into my income too. And not through, garnishing my wages, but by coercing me into signing away my tax refunds every year. And it was coercive. You have to consent to this is not consent. You have to consent to this or your husband will go to jail, right? That's not consent. That's coercion. And so I learned what it was like to be the person who couldn't sleep at night if the bills were tight. And I learned to, what it's like to be the person who couldn't sleep at night if the apartment wasn't safe, because we couldn't move out. We didn't have enough money to move someplace better. I learned what it's like to decide you gotta get a second job, you gotta get a third job, or we're never going to be able to get out of this neighborhood where our vehicle has been stolen twice in 4 months and where there are 15 illegal immigrants living in the apartment next door, and they keep asking us for money. I learned how that is. And that's a tiny taste of what I've watched the men around me dealing with. And I learned to pay attention to that stuff because of my situation. I probably wouldn't have ever figured it out. Most women don't because they don't ever step out from behind that shield. Feminists think, and most women think, that we are no longer under coverture, right? Because we don't have the restrictions and we don't have the rules that we have to live by that coverture put on women. But men are still under coverture, and they're still restricted by it. They're still obligated by it. They're still pressured by it, and they're still oppressed by it. And honestly, these women that talk like her are a dime a dozen. But I'll bet 1 in 100 of them couldn't stand up to 10 years in poverty as the breadwinner for a family with a husband in it, because of the actions of the ex-wife, and still maintain their conservative attitude. Like they couldn't do it even without maintaining their conservative attitude, right? So yeah, I'm tired of hearing about real men. All men are real men. All men face those pressures. Men respond to them differently, but they all face those pressures. Where are the real women?
That's a good question. All right, let's listen to some more.
Get something out of it. I quite frankly don't consider you a real man.
Yeah, she have
Okay.
nothing. She have nothing.
But we'll
No women
discuss
have
in a
no
moment
duties,
whether
nothing.
Andrew
They just get
Wilson is a
privilege.
real man.
Piers,
let's
I
go to-
offer nothing. I offer nothing.
You
He
offer
didn't
me
offer
a
a single
lot of
argument,
things, Tommy.
nothing.
That's why I always love having you on the show. You know that. Let's go to a real man, James Barr.
Thank you.
All right, I'm gonna jump ahead a little
Good
bit.
grief.
So, yeah, I mean, like she doesn't even know what he's asking. It doesn't even come across. Like she
Yeah.
just presumes
she
that
knows.
just being a woman is enough.
She
And,
knows. She's
yeah.
offended by the idea that being a woman isn't enough.
Yeah.
She's offended at being expected to actually earn respect.
Yep. Yeah. She presumes that it's all by default. That's why. Well, she says that men doing stuff for women is just like our nature. It's like
Yeah.
natural. It's our programming. So there should not be anything less than just a general expectation for it. And yeah.
You know, if
So
she
anyway,
understood what she actually said about herself there, she'd probably call it misogynistic.
yeah, she
If
probably would call
men-
it that.
If men being heads of household, if men being strong and brave and making wise decisions, being mature about not being selfish, caring about other people, putting themselves last and their families first, letting their bodies get torn up at work, letting their minds get torn up by all that stress. If that's the default for men, if men being mature enough to be stoic about all of that in order to ensure their family members' safety and security and well-being is the default, and women don't have a default that has anything even remotely approaching that. Women can just, by virtue of having a set of tits and a pussy, deserve the same level of and not necessarily respect, but I don't know, cred, right? Human cred,
Well, I
family
think
cred,
more
whatever.
cred. I think they expect
Right?
more cred because men don't
Yeah.
get anything by default, right? They
Right.
have to like go
If
above
women
and
are
beyond
owed
to
something,
get recognition. Yeah.
if women are owed something just for having tits and a pussy, right? That indicates that women are less than men right there.
Mhm.
Right? If women don't have to have any virtue to be viewed as virtuous. Women's default is I exist.
Yep.
Right? That puts men way up here and women like right about here in
Mhm.
terms of value. And I don't know if she realizes that she said that.
No, I don't think she's smart enough to realize that.
Instead of the best and brightest women staying at home raising their children, that's a way better system. It's always been a better system.
I guess we're talking
It's
freedom
like,
of choice.
that's not
No one's forcing
misogyny.
women to do anything. It's freedom of choice. It's freedom of choice. I love the fact that my wife's out there working, teaching kids and building adolescents. I love that. And to your point about what do I get from a woman? I have a home. I have 3 beautiful children. I have communication in the house. And to me, that means more than anything. Like, I don't understand where I'm not saying you're wrong in your world, but to sit there and say to a woman, what do I get out of this woman? That's treating her like an object.
One thing.
What?
Whoa! Because it's not treating him like an object when she
No,
says
that
all the
doesn't
same things
matter.
about
If it
him.
happens, it doesn't matter. That's what I
So
mean.
men
Like
are objects, but women are acted upon.
this is the default state for people. Like
Yeah.
this is where we are. Like this guy is not different from the average guy. What he's saying. So like we have to understand how far outside the Overton window we are.
Yeah.
We're way outside. And these people are really ignorant. Like I mean, I think they're really ignorant on this, and that's why they're just like what they fight for is to maintain their perspective on the relationship between men and women and family and everything as much as possible because they don't want their worldview shattered, and so they fight to hold on to it. And when somebody that's slightly outside the Overton window jumps in and says something rational and reasonable, they're like, dude, that sounds like objectification, which apparently is the worst. First of all, it's not what it is, but that doesn't matter because what matters is that they're treating it like it's the worst possible thing you could say or believe, which isn't true. Like Andrew, I a little bit of context because I kind of started in the middle. He was talking about how women are essentially entering the workforce and they're having their children raised by strangers, you know, in daycare and stuff like that. Obviously, there are situations where people use their family members or whatever, but he's talking about the common sort of setup where a woman who is like a career-oriented woman and a mother,
Yeah.
and she's trying to do it all, and she's sending her kids to daycare while she, you know, like goes and does her job, or even, you know, like lower levels of schooling, because they were talking about the problems with education, of which there are many, especially as it pertains to boys, and there's a reason why, you know, it needs to be defunded, gutted, altered, you know, whatever. For most of history, we didn't have a Department of Education. We had like families homeschooling their children, and a lot of people still homeschool. And ever since COVID, people have been doing it again. And so that's kind of like the whole education system is under scrutiny, rightfully so. So what he's saying is something that Karen has said, which is women enter the workforce and they're just doing the shit they used to do at home. They're just doing it for less money now because they are bringing less of it home, because they're taxing twice as many people. They're, you know, serving people that they don't know, like and it's sort of like it doesn't really, it's not having the impact that you think it's having. It's not making you as independent as you think it is. And the whole basis, by the way, where women feel more independent from their husbands because they have a job, is also based in a fear and distrust of their husbands to take care of them, like financially. And that somehow this financial independence thing is really, really important. Whereas people who are very poor in countries that are much worse off than ours make it work. They make it work. They live within their means.
It's not always entirely true. There seems to be this misconception in society that the way things are today, in the post-industrial age, is the way things have always been, and the way things are in countries that are not as industrialized, and so on. And it's bullshit. Poor women in situations where there's just no opportunity for their husbands at their education level or their skill level or whatever to make large amounts of money. Either it's because the economy's bad or because jobs aren't available in their field, or maybe they weren't highly educatable growing up, and so on. They've always worked. There's always been this situation, and it's not always been an outside the home necessary thing. Like, historically, not everybody that worked and earned money went to a job somewhere away from their home. A lot of people, their work was, I run a bakery and my whole family works there, or their work was, you know, I'm a cobbler, I make shoes, and my whole family works with me. They may run a farm, a lot of farmers, right? A lot of various different types of jobs that the whole family did together. And then you had whole families, including the kids, working in coal mines, working in uh, mills, working in as factories came into existence, working at the same factory, and so on. And it wasn't until child labor laws came along, said, "Oh, kids, no more working. You're going to put them in the school system." And then labor laws came along, like women worked in coal mines until Queen Victoria decided that that was too unfeminine and changed the system. And then they had to work outside instead of in the mine. And you know, these things evolved very broadly and very differently than the way that modern conservatives talk about it. They talk about it like there's always been a workplace away from the home that the man goes to and the woman stays. Like we skipped directly from hunter-gatherer to post-industrial man working in an office or a factory or you know, a sales floor or whatever, and the woman staying at home, 1950s, and everything that happened between prehistoric hunter-gatherer societies in the 1950s just doesn't exist. Our society Western civilization evolved through a variety of different ways of living and different ways of working. So the idea that women who work can't also engage in homemaking and caregiving for their families isn't true. What is true is that when women put work first, they cannot also put their families first. You can only put one thing first. And we have put men in a situation where they've been obligated to put work first instead of work being just a tool for them to support their families and make their place in the world, their niche. And it's not that it is okay now in society for us to also do that to women, because women have like our work in the home has been oversimplified, and I mean oversimplified. It's that it's not okay that we did that to men, and there needs to be a bit of a pullback. Men and women used to be a team. Mothers and fathers used to tag team every problem that came along, right? The reason I started working outside the home after having my son was because there was a problem that came along, right? The government's taken all of his income. The only solution to that is for me to bring in income. And so that's us tag teaming. That meant he spent more time with the kids. And there was a lot of benefit to that. That helped the kids a lot. So there was definitely a good reason for it. And there was definitely benefit out of it. What I understood from that, and from how hard my dad worked to spend time with my brother and me, and the benefits that we got from that, is that this modern idea that the kids are the purview of the mother, and that the father is just there to work and earn money and fund her family, that has to die if we want our kids, our future generations, to still have a civilization. That's not how our civilization was built, and it's never going to survive that way. Men and women need to get back to tag teaming in their relationships. They need to get back to tag teaming problems as they come along and working together, and stop arguing over stereotypes as if they're real and historically accurate descriptions of how we live and how we were made to live, because we're never going to survive doing that. And that's all I see these guys doing. There isn't a single person on this panel who isn't promoting a stereotype. Not one.
Mm-hmm. All right, I got a super chow, and then I'm gonna have to wrap it up because I got to go pick up Lindsay. So Great Indoors gives us $5 and says, during a presentation by the union that represents the sector I'm working in, they told us all the great things they were working on, like championing women's rights in the workforce. So I let out, what about men's rights? And a woman turned her back towards me and said, are you a real man? And immediately I replied with, are you a real woman? And she didn't know how to react.
Yeah,
right,
men need to
that.
start responding to that with, I'm sorry that you're suffering so badly. I didn't realize that you were living under the illusion that some of the men around you are not real. Mm-hmm. Have you seen a doctor about this? Because that's bullshit.
Yeah, for sure. So we'll do a part 2 to this, because there's like another half of the video. But I at least wanted to give you guys like an idea of where everyone on the panel here is starting from. But I do have to end the show here. Let me just check and make sure I didn't miss any super chats or super chows. And Allison was screaming from Discord, you should let me on. But all I would say is, you knew we were doing the show at the time we were doing the show. If you wanted to come on, you should have told me beforehand. Don't change plans at the last minute, because I have to change everything around in my setup.
Stop acting like a girl, Allison.
It's not cool. Tell me in advance that you want to do it, okay? So anyway, I got to wrap it up here though, guys. I got to go. So if you guys like this video, please hit like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, hit the bell for notifications, leave us a comment, let us know what you guys think about what we talked about on the show today. We'll do a part 2 to this, maybe next Friday. I don't know.
Well, it'll be 2 weeks for me. But
yeah, it'll be 2 weeks for you. So maybe we'll do the other half with Karen. I don't know. Or we could just wait 2 weeks and come back. But by then I feel like there'll be something else going on. So anyway.
There always
let
is.
us know. Yeah. Let us know what you guys think about this one in the comments. And please, please, please share this video because sharing is caring. Thank you guys so much for coming on today's episode of the Rantzerker. And we'll talk to you guys in the next one.
Men's rights activists are machines, dude. Okay? They are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.